Let's get into the 10 habits that might be keeping you stuck after a relationship with a narcissist. And the first one is self-blame. So if you're spending a good amount of time blaming yourself for what happened, that's a whole lot of time that is not productive at all. None of us are perfect, and there's probably something that you did that you regret doing because you're human. But if you're also spending some time on the internet trying to figure out what's wrong with the person that you were in a relationship with because things are completely off, nothing makes sense, it's like you don't know which way is up, then not only is it not productive to spend time blaming yourself for things that have happened, but it's also probably not super accurate. So if you were in fact in a relationship with a narcissist, the fact that the relationship wasn't healthy, regardless of what you brought to the table, is not on you. When you're in a relationship with someone who is emotionally abusive and refuses to change or even see fault, there's nothing you could have done to make it better. So the next habit you may have that would be keeping you stuck is people pleasing. So this is when you put other people's needs above your own. And not only can this keep you stuck in a toxic cycle, but it can leave you vulnerable to entering new toxic cycles in the future. Because when you're not prioritizing your own emotional well-being, it's very easy for a manipulative, abusive person to get what they want out of a relationship with you. So if you are struggling with people pleasing, I have a video that's going to be helpful for you. And again, I will link that in the card and in the description. So the next habit is one that we all do to varying degrees, and it is hard to break, but it is really important to break. This habit is negative self-talk. So if you're in the habit of putting yourself down, stop. The words we choose are extremely important. And so let's think of it this way. Every time you put yourself down, it's like you're putting a check in the column of I'm worthless or I don't matter. Whatever it is, whatever the narrative is that you have running in your subconscious program, you're putting a check in that column of the thing that you don't want. So every time you put yourself down, that's what you're doing. But on the other hand, if you turn that around and say something that you actually believe to be true about yourself, an affirmation, you're putting a check in the other column. Now, the other column may not have any checks. So the weight is way off right now, right? But the more checks you put in that column and don't put in this one, the better you'll feel about yourself, because the scales are going to start to balance themselves. This takes time and it takes consistency. You have to catch yourself whenever you're putting yourself down. But this is a very powerful way to reprogram that belief about yourself that is not true. And that belief could possibly be keeping you stuck in every area of life. So this one's really important. The next habit that could be keeping you stuck after a relationship with a narcissist is one that if you're in this habit, you're probably doing it to protect yourself, but it might be having the opposite effect. So this habit is isolating yourself, not going out and meeting new people, not connecting with people who are already in your life and people who you love. So if you're doing this, you should not be beating yourself up. You should not be beating yourself up over any of these habits. That is counterproductive. But it is helpful to recognize when you're doing something that might be working against you. So you could be isolating because you feel like you need to protect yourself. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, especially if you're fresh out of a relationship with a narcissist. But this isolation is not meant to be a permanent barrier, because it's really important to have that human connection to be able to move on and move forward and to have a healthy, happy life. The next habit you may have right now that might be keeping you stuck after a relationship with a narcissist is seeking external validation. And usually what this looks like after you've cut a narcissist out of your life is trying to get other people to see why you did it, or how abusive the other person was, or how wrong they were. And these feelings are going to be especially strong and understandable if you're dealing with a smear campaign. But regardless of what you're dealing with in the external environment, trying to defend yourself and trying to change other people's minds is never going to work for you. The motivations for doing things like that come from a needy place. They come from a place of, I need other people to validate me. I need other people to see my perspective. And in that seeking, you're also keeping yourself tied to that person and whatever relationship it was you had with them, because you're constantly fighting against other people's images of you in that scenario. So this is one that will keep you stuck for sure. And really the best way to combat this is to work on your emotional resilience. Try to figure out why it bothers you so much that other people are thinking what they're thinking, or that they might be thinking what you are fearing that they're thinking. Try to figure out why that stuff bothers you so much and really get to the root of it so that you can get yourself to the point where you can be at peace with it. Because if you can be at peace with what other people think about you, their opinions can't hurt you. So the next habit that might be keeping you stuck is one that I am intimately familiar with. I feel like I've spent a lifetime in this one. And that is what I'm going to call the I'm fine approach. That's just basically glossing over things. No, everything's fine. It's not a big deal. Whatever this happened, it's fine. It's fine. I'm good. Look at me. And that really goes hand in hand with toxic positivity. I won't go deep into that because I do have another video on that too. I'll link to that in the card and the description. But the short version here is it's not good. And really it's covering up things that you need to be looking at and you need to be healing. And because you're not dealing with the stuff that you probably should be dealing with, you might be avoiding people or situations that might trigger those bad feelings that you're trying so hard not to deal with. And when you're in that sort of active avoidance, it's something that's always going to be on your mind. And this is another thing that's okay in the beginning, right? But it's not where you want to be long term. Because if you're there long term, then that person is still taking up space in your head rent free. It could be years later and you're still thinking about whether they're going to be somewhere or whether someone else who's somehow involved may have a negative opinion of you might be there. There's energy in the avoidance, and that's energy that you're putting towards that person that you probably don't want to put towards that person, right? You'd rather keep that energy to yourself. And that would be a better scenario, wouldn't it? And the answer to this, again, is to work on your emotional resilience and also to work on healing the things that need to be healed from that relationship. And on a similar note, the next habit that you may have that is keeping you stuck is emotional reactivity. And this could be when you're having intense emotions and outbursts. And this, I want to point out, is absolutely something that happens. It's a natural byproduct of being in a relationship with a narcissist. And getting out of that relationship, your nervous system, your emotional well-being, you need to regulate. But if it's been months, years since you've been in this relationship, this is definitely something that you want to look at. And you may want to talk to a therapist about what's really going on there. So another habit that could be keeping you stuck is perfectionism. Perfectionism can be a trauma response, and it's usually a defense mechanism where people feel if they could just be perfect, if they can just do everything the right way, that they can gain love and acceptance and external validation. And this is one of those trauma responses where a lot of people don't want to let go of it. And that's okay. If it's working for you, if that's something that you like about yourself, then absolutely keep it. No one can tell you how to live your life, right? But I would say just keep an eye on this one and make sure that you're taking care of yourself and not always striving for perfection. So make sure that you've got that self-care routine intact and that you're doing things because you want to do them, not because you think someone else is going to be happy with you. So if you find that you struggle with perfectionism and you're feeling really stuck after cutting a narcissist out of your life, it may be because you're taking a lot of responsibility for things that were not your fault. So this goes back to the first one where we need to stop beating ourselves up. Recognize when you're doing it and do what you can to change course. So the next habit that might be keeping you stuck is self-sabotage. And this is when we do the things that we know are not good for us. And in this context, this one really does go back to rumination. So that runaway train of thoughts that you know are not productive, and you know they're making you feel worse. They're actively making you feel worse. Like you're sitting there just thinking. You might be alone on the couch just thinking, and all the while, your heart rate's going up and you're getting angry or you're getting sad, maybe even start crying because of something that happened. Those are not productive thoughts. While it's important to process things, let's not be seduced into thinking that rumination is processing, because that's a cycle that you'll get stuck in for the rest of your life. So if you're someone who engages in self-sabotage, you may do things that are going to undermine your progress or your overall well-being. If you're doing really well and you take, let's say, 5 steps forward and then you take 2 steps back, that's completely normal. Recovery is definitely not a straight line. But if you keep taking steps back, if you feel like you're taking actions to try to reset things and try to get yourself back to square one instead of the 5 steps forward that you already took, then you might be struggling with self-sabotage. So another habit that absolutely will keep you stuck is a victim mentality. And I talk about this in another video where I share that I really don't like the word victim, but it does have a purpose. It has a meaning. And when you are unknowingly caught up in a narcissist's web, when you are unknowingly being emotionally abused, you are a victim. There's nothing you can do about it. It just is, right? But once you're able to get out, then you're no longer a victim. And the reason why I hate the word victim, especially for people who are out of that dynamic, is because the word victim is so powerless. It's not something that any of us ever really want to be. So even if you're not in the habit of calling yourself a victim, if you're feeling powerless, that's definitely something to look at. Take a really close look at why you're feeling powerless and start thinking about how you might turn that around and start feeling a little bit more empowered. So the reasons behind it could be different for everyone, but I do have a video that can help you get to that empowered place, and you'll find that right here.